Hey folks, Brian, we got to play Elderath this past weekend. I know, shoot, already Monday, right? Uh, Sunday was a very, very busy day for me, and I had to get up early, so I didn't bother trying to do this after our game on Saturday. So, anyway, last time we left the party, they had gone back to the underwater temple and had attacked a number of the fishmen. And there's this demon thing attacking the avatar of Lorath down here. So Runt puts himself, well, gets in the position where he is seeing the demon, and he has one of these revelations that triggered his microcomputer tech skill. And he called out in Carillion to this thing to be gone, you lesser being. And then he charges towards it. Krim moves forward to the doorway, blocking the doorway, but tells you, run, stop, stop, stop. But Runt steps just outside of her protective circle. The demon comes up to him and does what was called an absolution, which means that the demon tossed Runt's soul out. So his soulless body starts just floating in the water there. We all move forward. The Avatar is talking to Raymond, who's feeding it magic points, and tells Raymond to use the temple defenses to remove, and she calls it something that we don't understand, or at least Raymond didn't. But she did not use the word demon. It was something else, right? Raymond, however, does not get a revelation, and he transfers more magic points. So Raymond attempts to access the temple defenses, and he can see a gate on the far wall behind where the Avatar is. On the other side of this gate is showing, a paradoxical situation, right? But the gate itself has been damaged. So he reached out to the temple defenses with the idea of absolving this thing. And a beam comes out of the Avatar's staff. And strikes the creature. Now, there's actually two creatures there. There's the giant praying mantis creature, but superimposed over it is this smoky, trindrily inky thing, which Runt saw. And the smoky, tendrily inky thing is what got hit by the beam, and it failed its save, and so the thing got pushed off somewhere else. And we're left with this giant praying mantis, and it begins to glow, and his eyes are glowing bright blue, and his wings spread out, and it shimmers iridescent colors. Raymond, still connecting with the Avatar, he gets this like radar feeling of the surrounding area, and that the fishmen are pushing themselves further and further out. The giant praying mantis spreads its wings, and the wings begin beating. And then a moment later, it disappears in a charismatic scintillation of colors. It is gone. Raymond again searches the temple defenses, kind of a mental kind of thing, right? And he's looking for life-giving capabilities. Meanwhile, we switch to Runt, who has found himself in the Garden of Lorath, and he can hear Raymond's voice calling to him. And he looks around, and he finds the Avatar, who is leaning on what was Raymond's staff, possibly. And she says, if you go further, there is no going back. He kind of mumbles and looks down, and is all embarrassed, and he thanks her for the leg, and then he blushes, and then he runs back to where he heard Raymond calling. And it was actually through this gate thing. So he steps through the portal back into our side of the portal in the temple area. And when he does so, he actually steps right into his body. He can vaguely remember the goddess Lorath, particularly her eyes. Okay, so we're dealing with what's left over after the combats, right? So we've got Heta's protege, who missed her sanity roll, having seen the smoky, tendrily thinky thing, and is in really bad shape. Raymond, in looking through the temple's defenses, finds that it has a variety of spell lists, including one associated with Paladin's Ways, which currently could only be cast upon Krim. But Raymond also sees Hjalmar, that he is in fact a candidate for the Paladin's ways, but he has done something in his past that needs to be atoned for, and that is preventing Raymond from casting the Paladin ways list spells on Hjalmar. And there's some slight discussion. Oh, we try and see live plays in the description, where a lot of this is discussed out because there's a number of discussions occurring about, well, what were these actions? And at this time, Hjalmar's player was running late, so he hasn't joined the game yet. But essentially, it's the direct actions that he took in giving the sword to Mad Eye and the slaughter that occurred after that. And so we can use the temple's powers to quest him, which would include the entire party, to go and get this atoned for. Raymond has a vision or a dream of a shadow of a high priestess. And it is in this location where she had some kind of absolution type thing occur that severed her from the goddess. And we ask, does this look like Lynn? And sure enough, it does. Okay. So while in the temple area, Raymond can cast the various temple spells. And the training areas we have can actually accelerate training increases. It's things that we're figuring out as we're communing with the temple, right? Hedda wants to stay here, but we as a group, to include the temple and cars, need to find a quicker way to get back and forth here, or we need to keep some kind of a presence in the cave. So there's some discussions on what can we do. It's kind of decided that where'd it go? Because there's only the one key, right? So we send the priestess, one of the acolytes. So Krim and one of the other acolytes is staying here. Heta and her protege are both leaving. So those four are leaving. And we get them through the gate. And the idea is we set up some way to communicate so that we know they're back in time. We try to figure out time and stuff like that. And there's more of that later, if I remember right. Okay, so Raymond gets this idea. Oh, yeah, and this coordination with just having the one gate. We take everyone around the temple areas and show them the various housing areas and the various training areas. But Raymond does know, through access to the avatar and stuff, there is a library out in town, and that it may have more information than we may want to get. Okay, so Raymond gets the idea as he's coming with the temple that he can actually assign roles within the temple. And that apparently, as we're discussing things, there was this mantis society. Remember the swords and the daggers had a little mantis thing on them? There's apparently some kind of skullduggery types. And there was a secret mages society as well. So there's these three wings: fighters, wizards, and skullduggery. Each of these areas has leadership within it that are then associated with larger groups or armies that are all headquartered here. And that this temple was used to train the officers and the commanders. There are 6 chambers in each housing block. These are the commanders of the various armies that are living in the city beyond. This is all stuff he's figuring out by communing with the temple. And they're doing training and communing with the temple and such. Raymond has gathered as having a connection avatar that he can assign or promote, or rather installs the actual word that the GM decide on. They can install the 3 specific commanders for these groups, the effects of which are not clear, and we've all got this gut feeling there is a cost involved with that. But the answers to these kinds of questions are probably in the library out in the city. And obviously these installations have duties associated with them, so there's some kind of a trade-off of what you are getting versus what you need to do with that. Okay. Next step is to figure out how we're going to feed ourselves while we're waiting for Heta or the temple to get back in touch with us. And through a handful of different magical and mundane means, we figure out, okay, we can capture enough food to feed ourselves. So that's not an issue. And there's no issue with water because Raymond has purified water. Okay, so we begin to search and study and practice throughout the area here. Wes does find another spell book. This one is Elemental Shields. It carries a percentage of 77 in the list, and 53% of that 77% to get to the levels that it actually has available. We're going to have to figure that out. Raymond also found a book of mentalism spells, but I didn't capture what that particularly was. It's not my notes. As during one of the nights, etc., we're discussing things. Krim starts to see something in a language that none of us understand, but then she describes to us her memories of being in a cave, and her descriptions are of mining with laser drills, energy weapons, right? But she describes it as a lance, an energy lance, and she wants another one of these energy lances. And then she describes having broken into a dome that's a crystal on the inside, a geode kind of thing, and that people began to die. And so Wes starts to commemorate with her because he's had these visions or memories of the geode itself that's in the desert on the mine. In the desert, in the mine near New Delhi, which is all from the Far Horizons campaign. So he's connecting with her on that level. I've seen this kind of thing too. I remember this and the guy on the pedestal and all this stuff, right? So it looks like we're going to spend about 21 days before we can expect to see anyone from Kars showing up to the shrine. And so that's when we're going to start checking. Hedda could show up with Lynn. She's going to hunt down Lynn apparently about a week after that. So we get to make our check rolls, and we've got 21 days of training, which will put us at week 5, day 8 of month 3, which is still the spring. And that's where we stopped. There's lots of further discussion that may still be in the live play. I tried to cut it off in time, but I'm sure there's probably a bunch of this at the end, just talking and discussing things and passing information that may occur on the recording. Happy gaming.